Hello, my name is Tom Clendon, and I'm in conversation today about the order in which you should take your strategic professional exams. Now, I'm joined here by Erin Morton.
Hello.
And Ben Wilson.
Hi.
And we are all independent ACCA tutors. We're members. We're all ACCA members. And the advice that we're giving and the discussion that we're having is our opinions that we are giving. So, Ben, do you think there is a right or wrong, good or bad order in which a student should be tackling their 4 strategic professional exams?
Yeah, I mean, for me, there is a very definite correct order. And although ACCA, you'll read some of the guidance that says you can do these exams in any order that you'd like to suit you. For me, there is very, very definitely a best way to do it. And that best way, if you pick it, if you choose the best way, you're more likely to qualify more quickly and reach the destination of being an ACCA member and all of the opportunities that will afford you.
I'm on bated breath hearing what the first exam you
Well,
recommend
I think
to take
you know,
first.
Tom, because it is an exam that is very close to your heart. It is start with SBR, 100%. Reason for that, SBR, no matter where you've come from, whether you've gone through the ACCA qualification right from the start, or you've been to university and had exemptions from all of the earlier papers and you've started at the strategic professional level. No matter which of those 2 pathways you've been on, SBR is the best paper to start with because it is financial reporting. It is something that you have studied previously and it builds on those earlier studies. And so you're starting on a paper where you've already got 1 foot in the door. Right? You've already got a bit of a leg up because you've already done a bit of it. It's a familiar subject to you. Right? So it's a good one to start with for that reason. It's compulsory, so you've got to take it anyway. And actually, Tom, you're better placed than me to talk about this. What is the style of SBR like and why does that make it good to do first?
Okay, I agree with you, first of all, that SBR is for me a natural starting point, although I'm pleased that you said it for me. It's a mixture because there are some rules to learn, there are some definitions and standards that you have to cover, there are some numbers, and so students have an opportunity to earn some easy marks, in inverted commas, for doing that. But it also gives you the introduction to the strategic professional level of interpretation and application and discussion and some of those softer issues around ethics. So I think it does have a knock-on effect and gives you information relating to some of the later papers because we're training to be accountants. We're training to be accountants.
I suppose it helps as well, particularly depending on how long your journey has been so far to get to this point. There may have been some changes in the accountancy world. There may have been updates in terms of standards and the way things are structured. So starting off with SBR, you're more up to date now as well, aren't you? So then by doing that first, you're hitting the ground running with the most up-to-date rules, and therefore you potentially can apply those to other papers. Options, for example.
Okay, so there's that bit of knowledge that you get from SBR that's helpful for the other papers.
Yep.
There's also the skills that you develop by your analysis, the kind of longer application type questions, more application style. That is
no multiple choice, no objective at the skills level. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of objective testing, but at SBR, and SBR also has less professional skills. So the other strategic professional papers have a lot of have 20 professional marks, whereas ACCA is SBR is a more technical, traditional exam because there's only 4 professional marks. Now, whether that makes it easier or more difficult, but it makes it more like the skills papers, more familiar. Yeah. Correct, more familiar.
Okay, so we all agree, I think, SBR is the best one to start with. There's one other reason, though, and we should talk about this, pass rates.
True.
Controversial, Ben, controversial.
But let's be honest, the SBR does have a relatively high pass rate for this stage of the qualification.
It has a higher pass rate, national ACCA official statistics. It always has a higher pass rate than any of the optional papers. And therefore, it means that you're more likely to get off to a winning start.
Yeah.
And I think
it's not easy, right? Let's not be silly about it. It's not easy, but it's perhaps easier than starting with one of the options papers.
So a good confidence boost.
which is important.
Absolutely.
Get off on the right foot.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay, so we're happy with that. SBR is the first one.
Good.
And then I'm going to make a bit of a pitch here because
You
I
are.
specialise.
You are.
I specialise in teaching the advanced auditing paper,
No
the
way.
AAA paper. And if you are taking the advanced auditing paper, you should be taking that immediately after the SBR exam.
I agree. And one of the things we'll do in a separate edition of this In Conversation series is to talk about which optional papers to choose. And I will repeat myself here, but yes, if you're going to do AAA, the time to do AAA is immediately after SBR. But putting your AAA hat to one side for a moment, or let me just turn to Erin. Where do you think we should be going after SBR?
After SBR, I think we should be hitting the optional papers, whichever ones you're choosing. Aside from AAA, there should be optional papers coming in there, and then leaving SBL to the end, as it is a different animal anyway, and it does pull together lots of stuff that you've already learned.
And it's kind of double reason. It's like the options papers are better to do before SBL, and SBL is best to do last.
Yes.
So the options papers are better to do earlier because they all build on an underlying paper, right? That you have either studied because you've done the ACCA qualification right through from the start, or you've done it as part of your degree and therefore had an exemption. But if you're doing, let's say, advanced financial management, it builds heavily on the stuff you learn in the lower level financial management paper. So things like cost of capital, NPV, hedging, all these sort of things, investment appraisal, are all in the lower level paper, and then you build on them in the advanced paper. And so you want to do it as soon as possible.
So it's
really.
about knowledge, it's about memory
Knowledge
retention.
retention.
Knowledge
Exactly.
retention.
Yeah.
Whereas SBL, which is Strategic Business Leader, you know, when I was a student, you know, I recognise all of the exams except Strategic Business Leader. I've never taught it. I've never did it as a student. I did advanced tax. I did all the advanced audit, but I never did SBL.
So I have taught it a lot. And what I find with SBL is that students do best in that exam when they have wider exam experience and wider work experience.
Because it's a bit weird, isn't it, SBL?
Oh, it's a
bit
great exam.
weird.
Weird is a horrible word. Right?
But
Weird
it's got
makes
the
it sound
pre-
like your shirt.
it's got
right?
the-
It's not weird in that regard. It's different to the other ACCA
But
exams.
it's got the pre-scene.
It does.
I mean, so aren't you given the questions before?
You're
Doesn't
given a
that make
little
it
bit
easy?
of preamble so that you can prepare
It's
for
not
the.
testing you on your knowledge, though, is it?
It's not really a knowledge exam. It's an application exam. So it's testing your ability to provide advice to a company. And students are better placed to provide well-rounded advice if they've got more work experience, if they've got more experience of other exams.
I hate to say this, but I found myself agreeing with him.
Yeah,
Don't
that
you,
shirt
Erin?
is weird.
Unusual, isn't it? Apart from the shirt, though. I like your shirt.
Thank you.
There are some other things to consider, though. What happens if you are, unfortunately, which happens, potentially resitting an exam? Where does that sit? There's always the risk when we're looking at the order that you might change up your order in a panic, but also you might take on the challenge of trying to do 10.
I get this all the time, right? So students want to come onto my AAA course and they say, I failed SBR. So I'm going to resit SBR at the same time as doing AAA. And I kind of just, don't do it. Don't do it. Right? You did SBR and didn't pass. That's because you weren't quite there. Right? You've got to put a lot of work in to get back to where you were for SBR and then beyond it to pass. You've got a lot of effort to do there. Why do you think you can take on another exam at the same time? What happens almost invariably where someone's failed one and wants to do two together as a result is they then fail both. And then they have to resit one at a time. Eventually they take that advice. So strong advice is just do one at a time.
One exam
One at a time. Yeah.
There are 4 sittings. In my day, there was only 2, but there are 4 sittings a year.
Yep.
And let's get students to take advantage. Is there any exception? Is there
It'll
any
take you a year.
exception?
It'll take you a year to do this level of qualification, right? Because there's 4 exams, 4 sittings in a year. Are there any exceptions?
Well, depending on the option that you choose.
Yeah.
I mean, we're looking at tax, so it might be that certain variants aren't available in every sitting. So that might affect your journey.
Yeah, so if you're doing UK tax, that's available 4 times a year. But if you're doing Malta tax, for example,
Irish tax.
or Irish tax. It's not available 4 times a year. It's only available twice a year, and therefore you need to be kind of planning around when you can actually sit that.
And thinking about updates as well.
Yes.
And thinking about year end. And
Yeah.
thinking
Yeah,
about
when I'm
Christmas.
busy at work
And thinking about
on
holidays. Having a
Yeah.
life.
I mean, there's always a reason not to do an ACCA exam, isn't there? Yeah, there's always some sort of festive season that I want to be celebrating. There's always some
Absolutely.
holidays, and there's always busy times at work. Anyway,
That's why we should plan ahead.
Good. Okay. Well, thank you very much for joining us on this conversation where we've been looking at the order that we recommend that you should be taking the strategic professional exams. So that's doing one exam at a time. That's doing SBR first. That's doing an optional paper and an optional paper. And then finally, as a capstone, the strategic business leader, when you're this wise, more experienced, better prepared to tackle that subjective skills paper at the end. So thank you very much for listening. There's another one of these in conversations that we're having where we're going to be drilling down on those 4 optional papers at the strategic professional level and which one you should be choosing, which two you should be choosing. We know what Ben's going to say, and I will be interested in hearing also what Erin's going to say on that one as well. So until then, thank you very much.